I always thought a wedding was supposed to be the happiest moment of your life. But the moment I stood at that altar, something felt wrong. I could feel it in my chest, like a quiet warning I didn't know how to explain. The guests were whispering before I even understood why. Some were shifting in their seats. Some were staring toward the entrance instead of looking at me. At first, I thought maybe Emily was running late, or maybe someone had dropped a glass. Something normal. Something small. But then I saw him, this man, someone I'd never seen before, walked into the venue like he had every right to be there. Not dressed like a guest. Not dressed for a wedding at all. Just calm, too calm. Hands in his pockets. Eyes scanning the room like he was searching for someone specific. And when his gaze finally landed on Emily, everything inside her changed. She froze in the middle of her walk down the aisle. Her smile disappeared. Her bouquet slipped in her hand like her fingers went numb. I didn't understand it at first. I just stared at her, trying to figure out why she suddenly looked like she'd seen a ghost. Then she whispered it under her breath, so quietly that only I heard. "No, not here." My heart twisted. I looked at her, totally confused, silently begging her to tell me what was happening. But she wouldn't look at me. She wouldn't even breathe right. Her eyes stayed locked on that man like he held some secret she prayed would never come out. He took a few more steps inside. Slow, steady, like he wanted to make sure we all saw him. He didn't look angry. He didn't look emotional. He looked like someone who came with a purpose. And when he looked at me, I felt it, a silent message. As clear as if he'd spoken the words out loud. "You need to know the truth." My stomach dropped. My hands went cold. All the confidence I had seconds earlier gone. The guests noticed the tension too. You could hear the way the air shifted, murmurs, gasps, chairs creaking as people leaned forward, and Emily. She finally turned to me, and the fear in her eyes told me something I didn't want to believe. She knew this man, not new like a stranger from the past. Not new, like someone who hurt her long ago. No. She knew him in a way she hoped I would never learn about. My throat tightened as the officiant cleared his voice, trying to keep the ceremony moving. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today," but he didn't get another word out, because the mysterious man, Daniel, took a step forward. Just one step, but it was enough to shut the whole room down. Emily whispered, "Please, please don't," her voice cracking in a way I'd never heard before, and Daniel finally spoke. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady. "Emily, we need to talk." Every guest turned toward him. Every heartbeat in the room stopped, and I felt the ground shift under my feet. Who was he? Why was he here? And what truth did he think I needed to know? As the officiant stared, frozen, as Emily trembled like the world was caving in, Daniel took another slow step toward us. And that's when everything began to fall apart. I didn't know it then. But the moment I met Emily, my life changed in a way I never saw coming. It was a quiet Sunday morning in Denver. I had just moved there after a rough breakup, trying to start fresh, trying to feel like myself again. I walked into this small coffee shop, one of those cozy places with soft music and warm lights. I just wanted a cup of coffee and maybe a little peace. But then I saw her. She was sitting by the window, sunlight hitting her hair just right, smiling at something on her phone. Not a big loud smile. Just one of those natural ones that make you feel calm without even knowing why. I didn't plan on saying anything. I'm not the bold type. But she looked up at me, and before I could look away, she smiled. "Hey," she said. Just one word. But somehow it felt like a door opening. We started talking first about the weather, then about the city, then about life. She was warm, easy to talk to, the kind of person who made you forget about time. I remember thinking, where was this woman hiding my whole life? We left that coffee shop with plans to see each other again. One date turned into two. Two turned into 6. And before I knew it, she was everywhere in my life. We cooked dinner together, explored mountain trails, watched movies on lazy evenings. She laughed at my terrible jokes, and I loved making her smile. It felt good, too good. The kind of good that makes you want to protect it, hold on to it, build a whole future around it. But even in the warmest story, there are hints of the storm. It started small. Little things you tell yourself don't matter, like how she'd get a message late at night and flip her phone face down so fast. You'd think the screen was burning her hand, or how she'd smile all day, then suddenly slip into this far-off look, like she'd fallen into a memory she couldn't escape. I'd ask if she was okay, and she'd say, "Yeah, I'm fine. Just tired, always tired." One evening, I finally asked about her past relationships. She hesitated. Her eyes softened in a way that made me feel sorry for even asking. "It's complicated," she said quietly. "Let's just say, I've been through things I don't want to bring into this new part of my life." I nodded. I didn't push. I told myself it was respect, that she deserved space, not pressure. And honestly, I wanted to believe her. I wanted our story to be clean, simple, perfect. But sometimes, the things we choose not to look at end up becoming the very things that break us. There were evenings when her phone would buzz nonstop, and she'd silence it without reading the messages. Times she'd say she needed to run an errand and come back quiet, almost nervous. Moments when she hugged me just a little too tightly, like she was scared I would slip away if she loosened her grip. But every time doubt tried to whisper in my ear, I pushed it aside. I kept telling myself, she chose me. She loves me. That's all that matters. So I ignored the small cracks. I ignored the little shadows around the edges of our perfect picture. Because sometimes love doesn't blind you. You blind yourself, hoping the truth stays nice and quiet forever. I didn't know it then, but every one of those small signs, every text she hid, every moment she drifted away in her thoughts, they were all pieces of a puzzle I wouldn't understand until it was too late. And when the truth finally came crashing in on our wedding day, I realized the storm didn't start at the altar. It started here. In these early days, long before I even knew I needed an umbrella, if I'm being honest. Proposing to Emily was one of the happiest moments of my life. At least it felt like it at the time. I planned everything. A quiet overlook in the Colorado mountains. Fresh snow on the ground. Soft winter light hitting the trees. I remember standing there, heart pounding, trying to keep my hands from shaking. And when Emily walked up that trail toward me, cheeks red from the cold, eyes shining, I thought, this is it. This is the woman I'm spending my life with. I dropped to one knee. She gasped. And before I could even finish asking, she said yes. Not just yes, she said it instantly, almost too fast. She threw her arms around me, laughing, crying, holding me like she never wanted to let go. In that moment, I didn't question anything. All I felt was joy. Warm, overwhelming joy. We jumped into wedding planning right away. Picking venues, trying cakes, choosing colors. Emily looked so excited, almost glowing, like this wedding was everything she had dreamed of. I loved seeing her happy. I loved being the reason she smiled. But soon, the cracks started to show. It began with the texts. Late-night texts she wouldn't open in front of me. Afternoon texts that made her face go pale. Messages she claimed were work stuff, even though she worked a pretty normal 9-to-5. Sometimes she'd leave the room to answer her phone, whispering in a voice too low to hear. Other times, she'd stare at her screen for a long moment before turning it off like she was shutting a door. She didn't want me to walk through. I tried to ignore it. I kept telling myself, wedding stress. That's all. She's just overwhelmed. And for a while, that excuse worked. Until the rehearsal. That night should have been simple. Practice walking down the aisle. Practice saying our lines. Smile for photos. Easy. But Emily wasn't really there. She kept looking at the entrance, like she was waiting for someone or hiding from someone. She jumped whenever her phone buzzed. She pulled the maid of honor aside 3 times to get some air. When I asked if she was okay, she forced a smile so tight it looked painful. "I'm fine," she said. "Just nervous. Big day tomorrow." But her voice didn't sound nervous. It sounded scared, and when I reached for her hand, she pulled hers back a little before forcing it into mine. Just a tiny pull, but enough to make my stomach sink. As the night went on, that uneasy feeling kept growing. Something wasn't right. Something was hiding under the surface, but I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to believe in us, in the future we were building, in the promises we made. So I pushed forward. I told myself everything would settle once we said I do. I told myself love could fix whatever shadow she was fighting. But deep down, a small voice kept whispering, "This storm didn't start today, and it won't go away on its own." I just didn't know how powerful it was, or how completely it would break everything the next day. The moment Daniel stepped forward, I felt the entire room tighten, like the air itself knew something was about to break. We were back at the ceremony, back in that moment that still echoes in my mind. Emily stood beside me, hands trembling around her bouquet, eyes locked on the man who wasn't supposed to be here. The guests fell silent, staring, waiting, confused. And then he said it. He said her name, not loudly, not angrily, just clear enough for every single person to hear. "Emily." Her whole body flinched. She whispered, "Please." "Not now," her voice shaking so hard it didn't even sound like her. The officiant tried to keep going, stumbling over his words as he pretended nothing was happening. But no one was listening to him. Every eye in that room was on Daniel, and on Emily, who looked like she was seconds away from falling apart. Daniel took one more steady step toward us. "I'm sorry," he said, looking straight at her. "But you didn't leave me much choice." My stomach twisted so hard I felt dizzy. I didn't know this man. I didn't know what he wanted. But I knew one thing: Emily's reaction wasn't the reaction of someone seeing a stranger. I finally found my voice. "Who are you?" I asked. Daniel looked at me with a mix of pity and frustration, like I shouldn't have had to ask that. "I'm Daniel," he said. "Her ex." The room erupted with whispers. Some guests gasped, others covered their mouths, and someone near the back muttered, "Oh my gosh, but me?" I just stood there frozen. Emily had always said her ex was from years ago. Someone she barely talked about, someone she insisted didn't matter anymore. So why was he standing at our wedding? Why now? Why like this? Emily stepped forward, holding out her hand like she could physically stop his words. "Daniel, please," she whispered. "You don't understand. This is not the time. Just leave." But that only made him shake his head, almost sad. "You told me it was over," he said quietly. "You told me you needed time. You didn't tell me you were getting married tomorrow." More whispers. More shock. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. Emily spun toward me fast, her voice breaking. "It's not what you think." He's twisting. But Daniel cut her off, not with aggression, but with calm truth. "Emily, you were still with me 6 months ago." The words hit the room like a wave. 6 months. 6. My mind raced. 6 months ago. We were already living together. We were already planning this wedding. Emily's face collapsed. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. She looked at me with desperate eyes, begging me to trust her, begging me to ignore everything right in front of me. She reached for my hand, but I pulled mine back without even meaning to. Her reactions, her panic, her trembling, weren't helping her case. They were exposing it. The officiant stepped back quietly. The guests watched like they were afraid to blink. And Daniel just stood there, breathing deeply, like he hated being the one to reveal all this, but hated the lies even more. Emily shook her head, whispering, "This is getting out of control." But the truth was simple. It wasn't out of control, that it was finally coming out. The moment Daniel said those words, "You were still with me 6 months ago," everything inside me went still. Like time froze and refused to move again. I felt my heart pounding in my ears. I felt my fingers go numb. And I could feel every single guest watching us, waiting for the truth to choose a side. Emily's lips trembled. She looked at Daniel, then at me, then back down at the floor like she was trying to rewind time with her eyes. Daniel wasn't finished. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Not waving it dramatically, not trying to embarrass her. Just holding it out toward me like a quiet offering. "I'm not here to ruin your wedding," he said softly. "I'm here because you deserve to know what really happened." My breath caught in my throat. The guests leaned forward. Emily whispered, "Don't do this," her voice cracking. But Daniel unlocked his phone and held the screen toward me. And there it was. Messages, dates, photos of conversations I had never seen before. Text from Emily saying she needed a little more time before making things official with me. Texts where she told him she wasn't ready to let go, even after we had already taken engagement photos. Texts from nights she told me she was working late. Everything lined up. Every lie. Every excuse. Every moment I brushed off as stress or nerves. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want any of it to be real, but the timestamps didn't care about what I wanted. Emily stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "It wasn't like that," she pleaded. I was confused. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I got overwhelmed. Her voice shook as she reached for me, desperate. "Yes, I should have told you," she cried. "But I was scared you'd leave. I finally had something good, and I didn't want my past to destroy it." Her words sounded emotional. But her timing? Her contradictions? They didn't match the truth on the screen. I stared at her, trying to understand how the woman I trusted, the woman I wanted to marry, could hide something this big. My voice barely came out as I asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" She shook her head, crying harder. "I thought I could handle it before the wedding. I just needed a little more time. A little more time. To hide the truth. To juggle two lives. To hope one would fade before the other discovered it." As Daniel lowered his phone, he looked at me, not with anger, but with sympathy. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I should have come sooner." The officiant stood frozen. The guests looked heartbroken for me. And Emily kept whispering, "Please," like she was trying to pull me back into a world she had already broken. That was the moment it hit me. Our relationship, our plans, our future, it wasn't built on trust. It was built on things I wasn't allowed to see. I felt something inside me crack. Slow and painful. Without saying another word, I stepped back from her. Her hand slipped from mine like a final goodbye, and then I walked out. No shouting. No scene. Just a quiet exit from the life I thought I was supposed to have. Behind me, people gasped. Emily cried out my name. Daniel stood still, watching me go. But I kept walking, because sometimes the truth doesn't just hurt you, it sets you free. When I walked out of that venue, I didn't feel angry. I didn't even feel sad yet. I just felt empty. I sat on the curb outside, still in my wedding suit, still hearing the faint echoes of guests buzzing behind me. The sun was bright, warmer than it should have been, but inside I felt cold, like the whole world had shifted without warning. People always imagine heartbreak as loud and dramatic. But that moment, my heartbreak was quiet. Too quiet. My phone buzzed first with a call from Emily's mother. I didn't answer. Then her father. Then her maid of honor. Then a string of messages from Emily herself, paragraphs filled with apologies, explanations, excuses, promises. Messages saying she never meant to hurt me, that she lost control, that she thought she could fix everything before I found out. I stared at the screen. reading her words but not letting them touch me. It felt like she was apologizing to keep me, not to be honest. And that hurt almost as much as the betrayal itself. A few minutes passed before I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting a family member or maybe an upset friend. But it was Daniel. He didn't stand too close. He didn't come charging at me with more truth or more screenshots. He just stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets, looking unsure of how to start. "I'm not here to bother you," he said quietly. "I just wanted to check if you're okay." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to blame him. Another part of me knew none of this was really his fault. He sat down beside me slowly, leaving space between us. "For what it's worth," he said, "I didn't want to show up today. I really didn't. But when I found out she was getting married, and knowing how things ended between us, I felt like I couldn't stay silent." I nodded. I didn't trust my own voice yet. Daniel continued, "I'm not angry at you. You didn't do anything wrong. I was angry at the lies. She told me one thing, told you another, and I realized we were both caught in a story she was trying to control. That hit me harder than anything else. Both of us. Two men she told different versions of the truth to. Two people trying to love her while she hid pieces of herself from both sides. That it wasn't about him versus me. It was about the lies she built between us. Daniel sighed, his voice softer now. "Look, I'm not here to make things worse. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry this happened to you. I know what it feels like to be in your position." And for the first time that day, I felt something other than shock. Relief. Because someone finally understood. Someone who lived through the same confusion, the same half-truths, the same emotional maze she created. When he stood up to leave, he paused. "You deserved honesty," he said. Both of us did. And then he walked away, calm, respectful, leaving me alone with a truth I'd been avoiding. Emily's lies weren't accidents. They were patterns, and now it was up to me to decide what to do with everything she hid. People say the truth hurts. But what they never tell you is how heavy it feels when you finally decide to face it. After the wedding disaster, I spent the next few days replaying everything. Every conversation with Emily, every excuse she gave, every moment I ignored something that didn't feel right. I wanted answers, not guesses, not assumptions. Real answers. So I started with her friends. Most of them were polite but nervous when I asked about her past. One of them slipped and said, "I thought she told you everything already." When I pressed a little, she admitted Emily and Daniel didn't end because of drama or some final breakup explosion. They drifted apart slowly, messily, emotionally tangled long after she claimed it was over. And suddenly, Emily's story started unraveling. Next, I checked the timelines. Old photos, social media posts, receipts, messages she once sent me. And the dates didn't match. Not even close. She told me she and Daniel ended years ago. But according to everything I found, they were still talking, still involved long after she and I had our first official date. It wasn't just overlap. It was a pattern of keeping doors half open while starting new ones. The more I dug, the more the truth surfaced. She told Daniel I was just a friend. She told me Daniel was just the past. She told her friends she was sorting her heart out. 3 different stories. 3 different versions of her. None of them honest. And that's when something inside me changed. The anger softened. The heartbreak settled. And what remained was clarity. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to embarrass her. I wasn't going to post anything or involve others in some dramatic takedown. No. My revenge would be simple, calm, and controlled. I would give her the one thing she never offered me, the truth. Every piece of it. All at once, face to face, not to hurt her, not to get even, but to finally take back my power. So I planned it carefully, a quiet place. No audience. No yelling. Just facts, clear facts you could no longer twist. I gathered the messages. The screenshots. The evidence she hoped would stay hidden. And every detail I found that showed the real story she never wanted me to know. I wasn't going to attack her. I wasn't going to shame her. I was going to expose the truth with dignity. The same dignity she tried to take from me. And as I prepared for that final conversation, I felt something surprising call on relief. Because this time, I wasn't walking into another lie. I was walking into closure. My closure. The one thing she couldn't control. I chose a quiet place for our final conversation, a small park near the river. Calm and open, where no one could interrupt and no emotions could hide. When Emily arrived, she looked hopeful, almost relieved, like she believed this meeting was going to be our miracle moment. The scene where everything magically fell back into place. She sat beside me on the bench, brushing her hair behind her ear the way she always did when she was nervous. "I'm so glad you agreed to talk," she said softly. "I know things got out of hand, but we can fix this. I know we can." I didn't answer right away. I wanted to do this right, steady, clear, honest. Not like the rushed explanations she'd been throwing at me the past few days. After a moment, I looked at her and said, "Emily, I'm not here to argue. I'm not here to shame you. I just want the truth. All of it." Her smile wavered. A small tremble showed in her hands. "I told you the truth," she whispered. "I just made mistakes." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small folder of printed screenshots and notes, everything I had collected. Her eyes widened when she saw it. "Let's go through this," I said calmly. "Together." I wasn't harsh. I wasn't angry. My voice stayed steady, even when my heart was quotes at first. I showed her the messages Daniel shared. Then the dates. Then the overlap between the start of our relationship and the end of hers. I laid it all out simply. One piece at a time, the way someone would explain a puzzle finally being solved. With each page, I watched her face break a little more. Not from anger, but from realizing there was nothing left to hide behind. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought I could manage both parts of my life until I figured things out." I nodded slowly. "I believe you didn't want anyone hurt. But Emily, you didn't tell the truth because you wanted control. And all it did was break everything." She covered her mouth with her hand, tears filling her eyes. "I love you," she said. "I just needed time. I thought I could fix the past before starting the future." I took a breath. A long one. Because this was the moment that mattered. "I'm not angry anymore," I told her. "I'm not here to punish you. But I can't build a marriage on secrets. I can't pretend none of this happened." Her eyes widened, desperate. "You're ending it?" "I'm letting it go," I said quietly. "For both of us." And that was it. No yelling. No dramatic scene. Just truth, spoken clearly. Emily looked at me like the ground had dropped beneath her feet. Speechless, shaken, finally facing the weight of her choices. As I stood to leave, she didn't stop me. She didn't chase after me. She just watched. Fully aware this time that the consequences had finally caught up. People think the hardest part of heartbreak is the moment it happens. But the truth is, the hardest part is what comes after. The quiet days, the empty hours, the moments when you have to figure out who you are without the person you thought you'd spend your life with. The week after I ended things with Emily felt unreal. No more wedding plans. No more late-night conversations. Just silence. And a strange kind of freedom I didn't know I needed. At first, I felt lost. Then slowly, piece by piece, I started rebuilding myself. I went back to the gym. Started cooking again. Spent hours walking along the river, letting my mind breathe. And each day, I felt a little stronger. Like I was finally stepping back into my own skin. I also reached out to a few friends I hadn't talked to in months. Friends Emily had once called bad influences or too opinionated. Turns out, they were never the problem. They were honest, sometimes brutally honest, but they always had my back. One of them said, "Man, we missed you. You disappeared when she came around." And hearing that hit me harder than I expected, because it was true. I had slowly drifted away from the people who truly cared about me, trying to make room for someone who wasn't fully honest with me from the beginning. Fixing those friendships felt like repairing a part of myself I didn't realize was damaged. A few days later, I ran into Daniel near a grocery store parking lot. It could have been awkward. It could have been uncomfortable, but surprisingly, it wasn't. He walked over with a small smile. "Hey," he said. "Didn't expect to see you here." We talked casual at first, then more real. He told me he wasn't proud of showing up at the wedding, but he felt it was the only way to bring the truth forward. And for the first time, I truly believed him. There was no tension between us. No rivalry. Just two people who had been caught in the same storm created by someone they both trusted. Before he left, he said, "I hope you find someone who's honest from day one. You deserve that." And hearing that felt like closure. Not the dramatic kind. The quiet kind, the kind that settles your heart. As for Emily, life handled the consequences for me. Her family stepped back. Her friends questioned her decisions. People didn't hate her, they just couldn't ignore the truth anymore. And honestly, I didn't want her hated. I just wanted honesty. Something she couldn't give until it was too late. In the end, this wasn't a story about revenge destroying someone else. It was about me finding myself again. And when I finally looked in the mirror one morning and didn't see heartbreak staring back, I knew my story wasn't ending. It was just beginning. People always say time heals everything. But I've learned something different. Time doesn't heal you. Truth does. Honesty does. Courage does. When I look back on everything that happened, the wedding, the lies, the heartbreak, I don't feel anger the way I used to. I don't feel embarrassed or defeated anymore. I feel wiser, stronger, and strangely grateful, because the truth is, this story wasn't just about Emily lying. It was about me learning to listen to myself, to my instincts, to the voice inside that whispered when something felt wrong. I ignored that voice for months. I wanted love so badly that I convinced myself the small cracks didn't matter. I kept telling myself she was just stressed, or tired, or overwhelmed. But deep down, I knew something didn't fit. And here's the lesson I learned the hard way: when your intuition keeps speaking, don't silence it just because you're afraid of the answer. Trust isn't about always having proof. It's about feeling safe even in the silence. And with Emily, that feeling slowly disappeared long before the ceremony. Another thing I learned? Lies grow. They start small, just a skip detail or a hidden message, but they spread like shadows until they cover everything. And when the truth finally shows up, it doesn't just crack the story. It destroys the version of life you thought you were building. But what surprised me most wasn't the betrayal. It was the strength I found the moment I walked away. I used to think walking away meant losing. I used to think staying and fixing things love. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is step back and say, I deserve better. Walking away was my quiet revenge. Not to hurt her, not to get even, but to reclaim my peace, my dignity, my future. And as strange as it sounds, leaving didn't break me. It rebuilt me. I learned that love without honesty isn't love. It's a performance waiting to collapse. And no matter how beautiful the beginning looks, the truth always shows up eventually. Sometimes it walks into your wedding wearing casual clothes. Sometimes it sits quietly beside you when you're alone. Sometimes it speaks through the pain you try to ignore. But it always arrives, and once it does, you have a choice. Let it destroy you, or let it guide you. I chose the second path. Today, I'm healing. I'm growing. I'm rebuilding my life with people who are real, open, and honest. And maybe one day, I'll love again. But this time, I won't ignore the signs. I won't silence my instincts. And I won't let fear convince me to settle for half-truths. Because now I know, the strongest revenge is choosing a future where you never let lies define you again. And that future starts here. With clarity. With confidence. With hope that a new beginning, built on truth, before you go. Remember, this story isn't just about heartbreak. It's about knowing your worth, trusting your instincts, and choosing a future built on honesty. If you connected with this journey, if you felt the twists, the tension, the emotion, hit that like button so more people can discover stories just like this one. And if you want to hear more dramatic tales of trust, betrayal, and powerful comebacks, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. I promise, there are many more stories coming that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Got your own experience with hidden truths or unexpected turns? Drop it in the comments. You never know. Your story might help someone else heal too. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying to the end. And remember, your peace is worth more than someone else's lies. Stay strong. Stay honest. And I'll see you in the next story.